because I think we have 14 people online and more will come, but in the interest of time. Thanks, Justin. Welcome, everyone. This is our first Zoom meeting for the legislative update for a incredibly busy year, and Justin will fill us in a little bit on this. Thanks, Justin.
Absolutely. So, as everybody knows, the biggest news this last week, in my humble opinion, is a friend to a lot of us and just an all-around very great guy. Larry Roden is now governor of South Dakota. I was very excited when that happened. Larry has been a friend the entire time that I've been lobbying. I'll just say it again, he's a great human being. He chose this week, announced former Representative Tony Van Huysen from Sioux Falls, an attorney, former chief of staff for governors, longtime Politico, as his lieutenant governor. Tony was confirmed yesterday by both chambers and is now officially lieutenant governor. This leaves Governor Roden with two legislative vacancies to fill in the House. Representative Herman Otten resigned just before session in District 6, and Tony Van Huysen's seat in District 13, my district. Don't worry, I would say no if asked, and I won't be. But so Tony is now lieutenant governor, and Governor Roden, I'm sure, will announce in the next couple of weeks who he's going to choose to fill those two vacancies. So let's dive right into the bills because we do have a lot. On some good news, TCSD had not taken a position on it, but there was a bill, House Bill 1048, that coming from Representative Sharda, that would have required every business in South Dakota to accept cash. I testified in opposition to the bill on behalf of the Sioux Falls Chamber. The retailers opposed it. I made free market arguments and said, let the marketplace control. If somebody wants to be short-sighted enough, arguably, to refuse cash in lieu of electronic-only payments, let them do that, and their business may or may not suffer. And the bill in the House Commerce Committee was killed 13-0. So resounding free market position from that committee. Next bill, House Bill 1050, which comes from the South Dakota Economic Development Professionals Association. This is a bill, I've described it in my reports. It's designed, it would give every municipality in the state the authority to impose, after a 60% vote of its citizens, to impose a 1% gross receipts tax to pay for one or more specific projects. And then that 1% tax would stay in place until those projects are fully paid. That bill is widely supported by economic development and chamber groups across the state, Sioux Falls Chamber, State Chamber, and others. Retailers, no, I'm sorry, the State Chamber is neutral, but the retailers and others, the Municipal League. And the bill will have its first hearing on February 6th in the House Taxation Committee. I think we're still awaiting TCSD's decision on whether and to what extent to support, oppose, or stay neutral on that bill. Oh, by the way, I should have started with this. I view this call as a cooperative conversation. I've said this before and I'll say it again. You are the experts in this field. So if I get to a bill on the list and you, which is almost always the case, know more about the issue, please add to what I say and feel free anytime to stop me and interrupt with questions. The call is being recorded so it can be posted later on the website. Don't let that make you shy. I've crossed off some of the bills on the list because TCSD stayed neutral. House Bill 1019 on property taxes. There are a lot of property tax bills trying to find some solution. We'll talk about one of those in a little while, which we will vigorously oppose. Moving on, let's talk about the 4 airport bills. We have got, these are good ones. 3 of them were filed yesterday. They're not part of the bad crop of bills. House Bill 1189. This bill will extend by 2 years the date on which GEOD dollars will revert to the general fund that were previously appropriated for airport marketing, route restoration, etc. This extends the existing state dollars for airport marketing by 2 years. It's my understanding TCSD will support, as we will probably support all 4 airport bills. Senate Bill 132 comes from Senator Colbeck. It would appropriate another $30 million to the Aeronautics Fund on top of the $10 million that was appropriated last year. This bill will be widely supported by airports across the state. We supported vigorously the $10 million appropriation last year. We're hopeful that this will gain traction. And if TCSD does not support and wants to stay neutral or opposed, please let me know. But otherwise, again, I'm going to assume, and I'll stop in a minute here to talk about all 4 airport bills as a group. I'm assuming TCSD will support. Senate Bill 178 and 184 were both filed by Senator Joy Hone, a new addition to the legislature, a pilot. And the 178 would increase the state tax on jet fuel from 4 cents to 6 cents, and then put the additional revenue into the general fund, but hopefully to go toward paying for some of the appropriations that have been made the last few years for airports. And then Senate Bill 184, also from Hone, would create a new higher schedule of fees for registering aircraft in South Dakota. We are way behind a lot of our neighboring states in terms of how much we charge for registering airplanes. Here again, the hope is that this will generate some revenue that we can use for improving airports in South Dakota going forward. So I'll pause there and invite questions and particularly comments from the airport folks on the call about these bills. And then Carmen can lead the discussion about support, neutral, whatever, on all 4 bills.
From my side, on the airport side, I think a good explanation of what's there. Biggest thing is, and I mentioned this at the meeting at Tourism, trust fund will continue to struggle going forward into the future. So we're working to try and shore up the trust fund with funding. The infrastructure bill, as I think everybody knows, both airports, we're in the middle of a major project, and Sioux Falls is about to launch into a major concourse expansion on there. So we're $222 million in needs. Total funding for our terminal, Sioux Falls, I think, is in the 100 to 130 million range for needs for theirs.
Any questions on any of the 4 airport bills? Otherwise, I'd turn it over, if we have a quorum of the LART committee, for maybe a vote, unless Carmen wants to do that offline.
Caleb, Ann, Michelle, I think we have 3 of the 5 online here. So, we talked about this earlier after we had several conversations, and the opinion at that time was that we were going to support these bills. Has anything changed?
No, I think we're still in support of them, aren't we? There haven't been significant changes to the bills. I know there were a few things, Carmen, that you had mentioned. No, Justin, say no, there isn't.
Nope.
Then
I thought there
as-
were, but there wasn't.
Okay, then if they are as they were before, I'm in support of it, or all 4 of them.
And Mike, sorry, I missed you up there.
Agreed.
Caleb?
Agreed.
Okay, all right. So Justin, we're in support of them.
Got my marching orders. That's good. My other client, the Sioux Falls Chamber, also aggressively supports all 4 bills. So this will add my voice on behalf of TCSD to Mitch Rave's voice in the halls on behalf of the Sioux Falls Chamber. Moving on, I'd like to talk about the campground bills. We've got 2 of them this year. House Bill 1154 is the return of Senator Al Norstrip, now Representative Al Norstrip's concept. He's just got to be in his bonnet about these municipal campgrounds being able to expand. And as you know, current state law says, if a municipality is going to construct or expand a municipal-owned campground, they have to get approval, written approval, from any private campground owner within 15 miles of the city. They don't like this. They claim that there have been a couple of examples where some municipalities have wanted to do this and they haven't been able to get approval. This bill goes further than a couple of the last few bills by saying you only need approval, written approval, from 75% of the private campground owners. And it also says what it said the last couple of years, which is if a private campground is owned by more than one person, you only need written approval from one of the people who is authorized to speak for the entity. So I know SDCOA is going to firmly oppose this bill. In the past, we have joined them in opposing the bill. My recommendation to LART is that we do the same thing. But before you discuss that, I'll turn to Senate Bill 117. It is coming from the auto dealers, and I think that they will work with us on it for our piece of it, TCSD's piece. But this bill would allow RV dealerships and repair shops, which are typically one and the same, to construct private RV campsites on their business property. And the bill says the goal is to make it so that people who have their RVs in the shop for maintenance or repair can park their RV there, stay at the private campsite while their work is being done. So it limits the scope of when these campsites can be utilized. Unfortunately, the bill has two serious problems, which Mary and the SDCOA have got a problem with, and we've got concerns with one of these. The first, which we have a concern with, is there's no limitation on the number of those campsites. Now, it may not matter if the purpose of the stay at the campsite has to be because they're getting their RV maintained or repaired, but we can talk about that. But the second problem with it is these campsites aren't subject to the traditional licensure and inspection requirements that other private campgrounds are subject to. And that's for SDCOA is where they've got real heartburn. Mary, I don't know if you're on the call, but I'll turn it over to this group to offer comments on both of these bills.
I don't see her on the call, but she was pretty adamant when I was messaging her back and forth yesterday that it just needs to be a level playing field. And, you know, the fact that there's no inspections or licensing, you know, is a real concern for that group.
Okay. I did share our concerns and the SDCOA's concerns with Christine Erickson, who is the executive director of the auto dealers. She said she appreciated it and said, hey, this is part of the process. So I think they may consider at least our amendment to the bill to limit the number of these campsites. Hopefully Mary and the SDCOA can contact Christine Erickson and raise their additional concern. So for both of these bills, I'd just turn it over to LART unless there's any other questions or comments for them to make a vote on what position we take on House Bill 1154 and Senate Bill 117.
Any discussion, guys?
I thought we were in our emails as stands, we were either neutral or against.
We were
Yeah.
monitoring, I think, is what we were
Yeah.
doing.
Right. So, I think if they want our support, they got to change to limit the number of sites. And if I remember right, Mary was talking about Jack's Campers having a full-on campground that they own, that they use as their rental, which I think that's a completely different story, right?
Yeah, that's a large one from my understanding at over by Piedmont. I'm not familiar with it, but it sounds like it's been there for a while as well. So I'm not sure how that whole process happened.
But that's a different situation where that's licensed and inspected and
I
is
believe
owned
so.
by the same entity, not.
If so, great. But what we need to find out is, would they view this bill as changing that to where they no longer have to be licensed and registered? My guess is no, because again, the scope of this bill specifically says on its face, it is for those RV dealerships to maintain campsites just for people who are getting their vehicles serviced.
Yeah. And I know personally, like I have people that end up staying at the resort for 2, 5 days, whatever, 10 days sometimes, because they're on a trip to the hills and their camper breaks down right next to Yankton and it gets towed there. And they, have to get a motel room at, summer rates or whatever rates it is. And they're annoyed because there's no place for them to go or anything. So I could see from the campground or the repair centers, this is really beneficial to have just a slab there with sewer and water and whatever to allow them to stay for $50 a night or whatever. And a real, customer driven service So I see the benefit of it, but and that's where the limiting the number of sites, I think, is the really important part to make everybody happy, make it 3 sites, so 3 campers can be in it for repair at the same time with someone staying on site.
Mike,
Does
let's
that
talk about that for a second here. From what you're saying, I mean, it sounds to me like this could pull business away from private campgrounds. So what about, do we want to consider asking them to amend their own bill to say if a dealership is going to do this, they can't charge for a campsite fee?
I mean,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
I guess, that could be something that we could consider. You know, I, obviously they have expense incurred with the them staying there, but they're going to roll that into the repair. Their extra electrical or sewer or whatever, if they provide that service, right? It's just going to be a service or whatever they're going to do. So I think it's a, chicken or egg. It doesn't really matter on that. I think it's the number of sites that's important, based on how many repairs they think they're going to have. I don't know. But
I
I think
also
that's the
I
important.
also think it's a fairness issue and a competitive issue. I mean, if they're going to operate a campground, they need to comply with licensing for a campground. And if they're going to be a service center, I mean, they're really trying to blend it. And I think it's an unfair advantage and hurts the campgrounds if I think it's a pretty slippery slope. You're going to see all of these RV dealers have campgrounds that don't have to play by the same rules as our campgrounds do. So I would liken it to the short-term rental discussion with hotels. I mean, I think if it's going to be competition, it has to be a level playing field, and I don't think we should be an obstructionist and tell the RV dealers that they can't use their property for a certain purpose, but it's got to be all under the same regulations, same rules. So you're either a campground or an RV dealer, and if you want to be a campground, comply with the campground rules and licensing. That's my take on it.
I'm assuming that the campground rules, and I can't remember for just RVs, Mike, you might even know, those stipulate like restrooms. And that's probably the biggest infrastructure thing I can see them trying to. I mean, these people have an RV that has a restroom in it. You know what I mean? So I think they're probably trying to play with that. I agree with the fairness part of it, like Caleb brought up, and limiting the sites. I think the utility of it, because when people are stranded, they really are stranded, and then they're stranded without a vehicle. I mean, the if the intent really is that, there is good intent behind the bill. I think it's just somehow making it so that it is not turning into, unlicensed campgrounds that are just big parking lots with electric in them. So, and no bathrooms. So, so
I
I,
like
I think the discussion still needs to happen with the auto dealers and see what they're willing to amend. So,
I like Caleb's point. One of the things I think as a compromise that we will get pitched is, okay, we understand where you're coming from. But if we limit the number of campsites to 3 or 4 or 5 at most, I think 3 is a fair number. But anyway, if we limit the number of campsites on a dealership property to 3, do we really still need to be licensed as a campground? I think I can see the reasonableness of that, because to Caleb's point, if you're not 5 or more, you're not 10 or more campsites, then you really haven't become a full-blown campground. And it really is at that point, arguably just for the convenience of customers. But so that's something to consider going forward. Is we'll probably be pitched that as, hey, what about for TCSD's concerns? We'll limit the number of campsites on the RV dealership property to 3, but don't require them then to be licensed and inspected as a campground.
I think that's reasonable. I mean, you have the same sort of floors, if you will, on licensing for hotels and other industries. So I think that seems reasonable, Justin.
Okay. I will for now, unless the LART members disagree, I will plan to, the TCSD is neutral on 117 if they are willing to amend the bill to limit the number of campsites. I'll start with the number 3 and come back to this group. On 1154, in the past, we've always joined SDCOA in opposing. So I'll throw it to the LART. Do you want us to continue with that position?
I would vote yes.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
That's the municipal campground one, correct?
Correct.
Yes, I'm fine with opposing that.
1154. I'm sorry. I was listening to Game Fish and Parks tell me their opinion on several of those bills.
That's okay. Yep, 1154,
Okay, so we're going to do what?
oppose.
Oppose. Thank you.
And on 117 for now, staying neutral, but with the hope of amending the bill. Okay.
Okay.
The bill that I was talking about with Secretary Hagan that I talked to Bailey about yesterday is 1159. This bill would change the way in which disbursements are made from the Gaming Commission Fund. There's a typo in here. It's currently 70% of those disbursements go to the South Dakota General Fund, while 10% go to the City of Deadwood's Historic Restoration and Preservation Fund. This bill would flip just that, just those two numbers in the statute. So that's only 10% would go to the general fund and 70% would go to Deadwood for their historic preservation. Department of Tourism has no position because at the end of the day, this doesn't move around any of the funds that tourism and TCSD have always been concerned about. I don't know if anybody else wants to talk about it, but I would guess that TCSD will be neutral on it unless and until it's amended into a harmful form. I don't know, Jim, if I summarize that correctly.
Yeah, and I don't, we take our marching orders from the legislative task force and the governor's office, so, haven't not yet seen the position that they're taking on that. So until then, we're Switzerland, and as long as it's not impacting, that was my concern. Without having read the bill yesterday, does it impact our annual appropriation from the Deadwood Gaming? It doesn't look like it does. But I know this has been a topic of discussion for the last number of years in terms of how this money is allocated to historic preservation versus the general fund. So we'll let you guys know if LTF takes a position and wants us to do anything. And we'll let you know what position they take either way. So.
And just for transparency's sake, my guess is that if any part of state government is going to oppose, it's probably not going to be Department of Tourism. It's probably going to be Department of Revenue or Bureau of Finance and Management, because this is taking funds from the general fund and putting them somewhere else.
That's correct. Yep. So.
And just a little background, this has been tried before. This is a little bit of a different form, but a little bit of history. Deadwood in year 2 or 3 after gaming started in 1990 hit the cap that is set. So Deadwood has not received any of the growth in tax revenues because that cap was set. So all of the additional money goes into the general fund. So Deadwood's saying, hey, can we get some of that? We need more police, we need more fire, everything is increased. So they have, to me, a logical argument. I think it's going to be a very difficult and heavy lift. It's been opposed by Department of Revenue historically. So my take would be that we probably stay neutral as TCSD on this one. And I don't think it will, as Jim indicated, it's not going to affect any of the tourism funding.
Any objection on the LART to staying neutral? Okay. This bill has a slightly better chance this year because it's coming from the majority leader, Scott Odenbach, in the House. So slightly better chance might mean that there's a little more push for it, but I will report further. Now I want to talk about my least favorite of the bills on this list, House Bill 1191. This has been tried in the past, always failed, but this year again, it's got some more push behind it for a couple of reasons. One, because it's Speaker Pro Tem Carla Lems from Canton and Majority Leader Scott Odenbach who have brought the bill. It would repeal the sales tax exemption for advertising and advertising services. In the past, I believe TCSD has always fought this. The reason why there is a sales tax exemption for advertising and advertising services is because the argument is it's one of the inputs into generating goods and services in South Dakota. In other words, it's to create business, not a business, but it is what it is. They are doing it, as the bill says, to put all of the additional revenues into property tax relief, which, as laudable a goal as it might be, that's not our issue. And what is our issue is that it's going to cost our members, they're going to have to collect and remit a lot more. And excuse me, they'll have to pay a lot more because they have to pay for those services and then they're going to be taxed on them. I have, and I talked to Carmen, she assumed that TCSD will oppose this bill as we've done in the past. I talked to Carmen and said, if TCSD opposes, I will have 4 clients that are going to oppose this bill. Sioux Falls Chamber, Wall Drug, the South Dakota News Media Association, and TCSD. It's very unpopular. There will be a lot of groups that will oppose it, and we'll just have to see what happens. But I'll turn it over to anybody else for questions or comments.
Justin, is there a fiscal impact statement?
No.
What is this? Yeah, what is this
that'll
gonna
come later.
raise?
Yep.
And Justin, did I also see in there that one of the exemptions was radio? I for some reason in that whole list, I thought I saw radio, and I'm like, I can't imagine that the broadcasters.
Oh, broadcasters will absolutely oppose,
Okay.
along with the newspapers. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think every effort with this property tax relief has been on the backs of businesses, and every proposal seems to be targeting shifting that burden to commercial.
Yeah.
I would vote to oppose this as TCSD. That would be my motion, if you will.
I'm opposed to it too. I think that, yeah, I think for all of TS.
Rick, you want to weigh in on this? I know you added a little bit yesterday. Your mic is muted, Rick.
Do we think it's going to be like a 10% tax on advertising and advertising services?
No, it would just go to the normal tax. The only exception is there is a new provision in the bill that says if it's advertising of a drug, it will be raised to 10% just for that narrow category. So I don't know. I'm assuming that Representatives Lems and Odenbach may be targeting all the medical marijuana advertising. They also, they might, but regardless, they're targeting pharmaceutical companies, those billboards, those TV advertisements, whatever. So I think they view it as a way to make businesses generally pay the normal tax rate of 4.2%. I think I have that right. Yes, 4.2% state level. And then drug companies would pay 10% sales tax on advertising services, and then they'll use that revenue. But no, it doesn't raise all advertising to 10%, just if you're advertising a drug.
Hopefully they're not going to consider Wall Drug a drug, and and otherwise it's going to be a very significant tax on Wall Drug because we advertise heavily and we engage in a lot of advertising services. So it'd be a huge hardship for us.
Yep.
Justin, where do they see when you get to state or local taxes? So is the point of sale going to be with the agency that you would say purchase the ads from? Like, where would the city taxes end up if that goes through?
It's a fair question. I need to ask that of people. I will talk to Department of Revenue and Jim Terwilliger to try and get an answer to that question. However, my guess is they're going to say it's point of sale with whatever agency you're using. So if you're doing it in Sioux Falls, it's going to be 6.2%.
Okay. That's my guess too. I just, not sure if they've thought that part through yet.
Okay, Lart, any other thoughts?
I would oppose this as well.
Okay, TCSD will oppose House Bill 1191. I'll keep everybody posted on what happens with that. One of the things that happens every time you bring one of these bills is it opens up the general discussion about why advertising and not any or all of the ag sales tax exemptions. And then, of course, that gets that group animated. And yeah, so I am hopeful that this bill will not go anywhere. I think I can't remember from prior years, maybe someone on this call can remember, when you repeal an exemption to a sales tax, do you need a 2/3 majority vote? I don't think so, because you're just repealing an exemption, not creating a new tax, but I'll report on that too. So I've got two questions to ask. House Bill 1203 would authorize pari-mutuel historical horse race wagering in the games of chance permitted in Deadwood, and it imposes a new tax on any such wagering. I will not pretend to understand what any of this means, but Carmen, do we have someone on the call who knows the issue?
No, originally Shane Cramey was going to be on the call, but he texted me and said he was not going to be able to be there. Caleb, maybe you can speak more towards this.
Yeah, I've been involved from the beginning on this, so I'm not sure this bill is even necessary. I think it's a manufacturer or a vendor license with the South Dakota Commission on Gaming, and it's not necessarily a state law that needs to be enacted if they want to offer a type of game. This is not coming from Deadwood. This is the Horse Racing Association that is looking for funding mechanisms. I can tell you it's a very controversial game. In fact, it started in Kentucky, and Kentucky has since prohibited the use because they are difficult to regulate. It is a game that is likely not going to be popular in Deadwood. I have the Deadwood Gaming Association is working on this with the Deadwood Gaming Commission in order to figure out if it's simply just an application for licensing rather than an actual bill or statute. What I don't want to have happen is it to be perceived as Deadwood is asking for this additional game, because that is not the case. In fact, we likely won't even put it in.
Okay.
So that's kind of what this bill is about. So it's coming from the Horse Racing Association.
And I did listen in on their monthly meeting back in December with the South Dakota Gaming Commission. And if I recall correctly, they were asking that group to take one extra step. And I can't remember what it was, if it was getting that license that you're talking about.
Yeah. They have to submit, they're called par sheets, basically your pay tables for these games, which therein lies the issue with these games. It's a very difficult math model to regulate. It's not like a slot machine with a random number generator. You're wagering on the front end on horse races, but behind it is like a slot machine odds. So it's a very odd game. Like I said, Deadwood's probably not going to be a huge fan of it. There may be an operator or two that wants to put it in, but this is not coming from Deadwood. This is the Horse Racing Association looking for a funding channel.
And then they also have another bill, correct, Justin, as far as the $60,000 transfer?
Yes, sorry.
No, that's okay.
That's on one of my lists somewhere.
Yeah, I think it was 2 lists ago.
Yep, 1057. And I know on that one, we really didn't have a position. So does Lart want to do anything with either or HB 1203 pari-mutuel or 1057 to transfer 60 grand from the racing fund?
Is that just kind of a cleanup, or is that something brand new? Because
1057?
yeah.
I don't know the answer to that question. Caleb, do you know anything about this 60 grand transfer?
I don't. So the South Dakota Commission on Gaming is tasked with regulating horse racing as well. So it kind of falls under that purview, but they've struggled financially for years, probably the last 10 or 15 years. And I think they're just looking for ways of trying to keep it liquid. So I have no idea what that 60 grand's about and why it would take a state law to try to transfer $60,000. It just seems odd to me.
Oh, that's if you're going to transfer from one state fund to another, unless it's special categories where they don't have to go through appropriations, which is a very limited list, you have to do an appropriations bill to make a transfer like that.
Okay.
Yep,
So it's in front of appropriations, but nothing's been done with it, is what you're.
correct. Yep, the appropriations committee for the first 3 weeks, 4 weeks, most of their business is getting the briefings from every state agency on what their piece of the budget is and what's happened in the last year and that kind of stuff. So they're deep in the middle of that right now.
Go ahead, Suzanne.
I think we were monitoring that bill, and I'm fine with monitoring both of them or staying neutral on them.
Okay.
I would agree. I think what will happen ultimately, again, we're actually working on it today. The Deadwood Gaming Association will work with them to try to figure out if a law is actually needed, and rather they can just go to the commission and ask for permission for the game. So
Perfect. All right. Sounds like we'll stay neutral on that one. I included in this list Senate Bill 144 and Senate Bill 153. We knew this was coming. We talked about it before session began. There's a lot of animosity toward GF&P among some of the current appropriators, i.e. Taffy Howard, and former appropriators, i.e. Senator Chris Carr, against GF&P. And we knew this was coming to try and mess with the way in which GF&P gets funds and manages funds. So both of these bills are for that purpose. I'm assuming GF&P and the administration will aggressively oppose. I don't know that they are directly our issues, except to the extent that they could in the future have an impact on capital outlay, projects, whatever, that our customers utilize regularly. But I put them on the list just in case we wanted to lend support to GF&P. Jim, I don't know if tourism is going to do anything with either of these bills, but I'll throw it out to the group for comment.
Just to fill you in, Game Fish and Parks has told me that they will obviously oppose all three bills. And they just wanted to let us know too that, they already have to approve their project or submit their projects. So, they already kind of do what is being asked in that one specific bill. And, they're a huge part of our industry. So I completely understand where they're coming from, and I'll let Jim fill the rest of you in on his thoughts.
Yeah, again, whatever the administration does to take a position on this will be our position as well. But yeah, I understand where this issue is coming from. Was a part of some meetings a couple months ago on some of the consternation from the Appropriations Committee members. But yeah, we'll fully support Game Fish and Parks, whatever their position is. If they're opposed, we're opposed.
Art members, any thoughts on whether we oppose or stay neutral, just monitor on both of these bills?
So am I understanding the bills correctly? The one really says that the even federal funds that come in that would fund Game Fish and Parks then have to go through general funds too. Maybe I didn't read it thoroughly enough. But it seems like am I understanding they're trying to take funding that Game Fish and Parks has, and it all will have to go through general funds and be appropriated by the legislator, right? Is that the case?
Carmen, do you know off the top of your head? I'm going to pull up the bill now.
I can't tell you that. Like I said, I listened to that message so quickly.
Okay.
To listen to you guys, but I can find out a little bit more this afternoon.
So my thought on it, I read through them this morning, and a lot of the language was just changing the same. It was like, that'll have to go through general funds. That'll have to go through general funds. So I'm inclined to say that I don't know that we need to take a position today, but that we monitor this closely and that we, I would say, support game fish and parks. They're very, very important to what we do for tourism in South Dakota. It's one of the main products that we sell, I guess you could say, or, that we market to invite people to our state to experience. So these are, important things for game fish and parks to be able to improve the products that they have. Their deferred maintenance, I know, has been a concern for them. And so, I don't know without any further discussions, but all of those things sort of were what I was thinking of when I read through them this morning, that, I don't know, I wouldn't want them to hold up on being able to take care of the assets that they have and do what for hunting and fishing and recreation as it affects our visitors. Sorry, I'm not very articulate in the morning.
No, everything you said makes perfect sense, and I agree with you. I will try and get an answer to the question of whether this also applies to federal funds. Looking at the bill, it says any money. So I would assume it means any money that comes down from the federal government as well.
Yeah.
And this was just dropped yesterday too, right? So
Correct.
nothing has happened. Okay.
Nope, hasn't even been assigned to committee. In fact, because it's a Senate bill, this session, committee assignments in the Senate have been notoriously long. They're taking forever to be assigned to committee. Whether that's strategic or part of the process or just a change in control, I don't know, but it is what it is. So if I'm hearing things right, unless there's an objection from any other LART members, we will stay neutral for now and monitor, but I'll report further if this, ramps up, or if Carmen or I hear that GF&P really needs some help in trying to defeat these bills, and they're going to have major implications for our members. Okay. Two last items. HB 1131 would appropriate $5 million for restoration projects in the South Dakota Capitol building. As I said in my report, in my opinion, it could use it. We have a beautiful Capitol. We don't want it to deteriorate, but at the same time, it's probably not our issue because traditionally TCSD has not gotten involved in appropriations that are only for one specific community. And my current instructions are monitor only. The other one is Senate Bill 79, which is coming from Senator Taffy Howard, would allow Class 1 e-bikes on the Mickelson Trail. It is viewed with hostility by some people in the Black Hills who say, well, she's clearly doing this to make it clear that Class 2 and Class 3 e-bikes are not allowed on the Mickelson Trail. GF&P has shared comments that this is going to be difficult to enforce whatever it says, and they'll put up signs, but policing it's going to be pretty difficult. So I don't know if there's any thoughts or comments from the group on either 1131 or 79. And then I'll just close out by saying, if there are any other bills in the, I can't remember, 300 something that are now on file with the legislature, let me know. Because if I miss anything, I defer to this group to point out to me bills that would have an impact on tourism or our industry.
So I don't have any other bills, but I do have a comment/question regarding the two open seats in the legislature that Governor Roden will fill. Are these kind of a foregone conclusion? Are there names, or is this an opportunity for TCSD to at least float some names of people that we know are tourism friendly?
The governor is, this is what has happened for the last 20 years. The governor has invited the public to provide input, nominations, names, whatever, to the governor's office for consideration. Many groups have reached out. Many individuals who would have an interest in filling those seats have reached out, submitted resumes, asked for interviews, whatnot. I know that in District 6, it was a three-way Republican primary between Herman Otten, Aaron Aylward, and a woman named Wendy Hogan. Wendy Hogan lost the three-way primary, and Aylward and Herman Otten were in the legislature. Herman's now out. Many in that district have asked that Wendy Hogan be the person. I know that for multiple reasons, if anyone on this call knows her, I'm not casting aspersions. For many reasons, Ms. Hogan is probably not going to be the choice, is my guess. I don't know if and to what extent she would be favorable at all to our industry anyway. In the other district, District 13, it was a three-way Republican primary between John Hughes, Tony Benizen, and a man named Brad Jankert, who's a young business professional in Sioux Falls. John and Tony won. I know that from talking to him, Brad Jankard would probably be favorable to our industry, to business issues, et cetera. I'm confident he will have put his name in and others will have put his name in, but I don't know. TCSD putting forward anybody, unless somebody on this call can think of someone off the top of their head in either of those districts, my recommendation would simply be, let's wait and see what happens. I do know that the last couple of gubernatorial administrations have gotten tons and tons of information overload. So I would just say for now, let's monitor. If I hear anything where a word in the ear of the administration could help one candidate who would be favorable to us, I'll let you know. But I can also tell you, all the administrations are incredibly secretive about the process, and we probably won't know any of the names that are being considered until the person is announced.
Okay, good. Thank you.
But good question. Other questions, comments, bills, movie reviews? Rumors you want to start?
I think we'll stay clear of that. Okay.
I stole both those last items from David Owen, the exec of the state chamber. He says those things on all of his statewide calls.
Okay. So out of those 100 bills yesterday, have you gotten through them all already?
Yes.
Oh my God. Okay. So we're pretty sure you have all of those covered then, as far as what might potentially affect our industry.
Yep, that's what I said. I tell all my clients this. Again, you all are the experts. Please check my work. It's kind of like Santa. We need to check it twice. So if you see anything that I haven't identified, please contact me and let me know, or contact the group and let us know.
All right. Does anybody else have anything else for Justin? Very thorough. Thank you so much. Are you going to take a little time off this weekend?
Huh?
Are you going to take a little time off this weekend?
Today, my calendar is completely blue the entire day, meaning that from 8 a.m. until about 4, I have meetings and appointments exactly like this one, including for my law practice. So we'll see what happens, but I really hope I can get some sleep. It's been an insane 3 weeks.
Okay.
Just to close things out, the deadline for unlimited numbers of bills being filed was yesterday. Hence the deluge of bills. This coming Thursday, I believe, is the absolute final deadline for any legislation to be filed, including committee bills. And there's only usually a handful of those. From now until then, every one of the 105 legislators is allowed an additional 3 bills, no more. However, I have it on good authority that most of the legislators have probably already gotten all the bills filed that they plan to file. Even so, keep in mind that means that there could be an additional 315 bills between now and the end of the filing. I've never seen that happen in my 15 years. I don't think it's going to happen, but I would not be surprised to see another 100 bills get filed between now and Thursday. That number is usually pretty accurate, and that would mean that we would end up just short of about the same as where we were last year. 479 bills in 2024. I've told multiple people I suspect we'll be around that same number, which is surprising because there were almost 900 bill drafts circulating within the LRC. But the good news is we hope that that close to half of those don't get filed.
Well, in the event that another 100 or so get filed, if we would have to schedule another meeting like this,
Yep.
we could insert another one next week, Friday possibly. Because the next one's not till February 14th.
Correct, but they are in session all 5
Oh,
days next week.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. Okay.
So
We have
it would be difficult. Now, if we did it Friday afternoon, when I'm on my way back to Sioux Falls, then perhaps, but yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll wait to see what happens with it then. So, okay. If anyone has anything else to say, now's the time. Otherwise, we're going to let Justin go. All good then. All
Okay,
right.
I will stop recording, and Carmen, I'll try and get you the file.
Perfect. Thank you. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.